Welcome to Journey Home to Self. This is a place for us to explore the milestones, the roadblocks, the pit stops, and the breathtaking sights on the most important journey of our lives. The journey of coming back home to you. My hope is that through the stories, insights, knowledge, and wisdom we share here, you get inspired and activated to widely fall in love with choosing yourself every single moment. I'm your host, Deepshikha Sairam, and I am truly so excited and honored that you are here. Let's dive in and journey home to self together. Hi everyone, I have something exciting to share with you. Next week, we'll be releasing a special 2-part episode on the Journey Home to Self framework. What is the Journey Home to Self framework, you might ask? Friends, after being on this journey now for many years, and after talking to and working with many women who've also been on the quest to come back home to themselves, I know that although our individual experience might look different, our paths are very similar. I also know that when we know the what, the how becomes simple. It's like when you first learn how to drive and you have to drive to a new place, you put the address on Google Maps, and if you preview the directions, which is something that I always do when I have to drive to a new place, and you look at the route, you somehow believe you can do it. Now, if you're anything like me who has a real fear of driving at high speeds on the highway, your heart might still race when you have to merge. Your palms become sweaty when you accelerate from 30 miles per hour to 75 miles per hour. But you still keep going. Because Google Maps becomes your guide. It tells you what roads to avoid, where you will meet traffic, and when you have to exit. It also tells you you've arrived so that you know to put your car in neutral and get out of it. That's exactly what the Journey Home to Self framework is. It'll show you the path of least resistance, the traffic jams, aka challenges you're going to face, the resistance you'll come up against, and the gifts you'll receive for being on the journey. And although there is no arriving on the journey home to self, meaning there is no real destination that we are seeking, it will tell you that you are on the right path. Knowledge is the precursor to an experience. Your higher self, God, source, universe, whatever you call it. She's always guiding you on the journey home to self. There's only one difference. Some are aware that they are on this journey, and some are unaware. Those who are unaware, the journey can look very chaotic to them. They feel that the world is against them, and there seems to be a lot of friction as they constantly stay stuck in a cycle of self-doubt and fear. And they need to live by the rules others have made for them at the same time wanting to break out of them. It's a real struggle. We've all been there. Self-awareness, friends, is power. Those who are aware of the path that they are on, they cherish the experience. They seek the wisdom hidden in the nooks and crannies of this journey. They long to meet the true self. They look at the breakdowns as breakthroughs. Again, if you know the what, the how becomes simpler, doable. And I'm so excited to share with you my true understanding of coming home to self, the Journey Home to Self framework. We will be releasing 2 episodes, Journey Home to Self Framework Part 1, that will be dropped next Wednesday, that is November 9th. And the Journey Home to Self Framework Part 2 will be dropped the very next day, November 10th. Now, both the episodes build on each other, so definitely tune in and listen in that order. And for those of you who are visual learners, we'll also have a handy PDF guide to guide you on the framework with some bonus tips and tools that I share just on the guide. I'll tell you how to get it next Wednesday. For now, you don't have to do anything except subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, so that you are notified when the episode comes out. And if you are like me who lives by her Google Calendar, why not add it to the calendar to remind you? Part 1 will be released on November 9th, Part 2 on November 10th. All right, I'm really excited for this. I hope you are too. Now, about today's episode. Our guest today is money mentor and my good friend Katy Chen Mazzara, and she's going to demystify the topic of money as it relates to our journey home to self. You will see how she changes my perspective on money, and she also gives us some great tools to start releasing any money blocks you may have to experience greater abundance. It's a good one. You'll enjoy it. Now let's welcome Katy. All right, welcome to another episode of Journey Home to Self. I'm so excited you all are here. Today, I have a special guest with me here on the podcast, and we are talking about a special topic. Now, might not be so special to you, it might be scary to you. I know it has been for me many, many times. And the topic is money. And I have Katy Chen Mazzara, who's a certified trauma informed financial wellness coach for creative professionals. As a former TV producer, award winning documentary filmmaker, and journalist, Katy understands the balance between dreaming and doing. Through her 6-step financial freedom formula, she helps creative freedom seekers make money, worry less, and achieve true financial freedom so that they can create the life of their dreams. Katy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deepshika. It's so nice to be here. And I'm so excited because I've been listening to this podcast and I just love it so much. And so I'm so honored to actually be a guest.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for coming in, because I think money is such an important discussion. And we don't always talk about money in terms of journey home to self. Specifically for me, I thought that those two are different topics. Money cannot be in my spiritual journey, and spiritual journey has no place in money. And I was totally mistaken. And I know that money is a touchy topic for everybody. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited that you are also liking the show. So before we go into all the logistics and the story and everything about money, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you told people that I was a TV producer and all of those things. And that's kind of where I got started. I was a TV producer, a freelance TV producer for over 15 years. And during that time, I really went through a lot of ups and downs with my income because as a TV producer, you work on a show for maybe 3 to 6 months, and then you don't work, and then you're on to the next show. And so during that time, it was a journey of trying to figure out, like, how do people do this? How do people manage their finances when their income is really inconsistent? And so, I started to read all of the books that I could get my hands on, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and all the Susie Ormans and everything under the sun, and realized like I loved this stuff and that there was also something more to this, right? So I actually started to kind of go down a deep path of like even self-discovery. And what I found out too, in my past, I've had 3 women in my life who stayed in abusive relationships because of the lack of money. They didn't work outside the home. They had small children that they had to take care of. And so they ended up staying in these terrible relationships and abusive relationships. And they, didn't see a way out for themselves. And so my mission has always been to empower people to make decisions not based on money. And in fact, I really want to stress and help people to make decisions based on their dreams that they have for their lives and the dreams that they have for their children. Because, we have this one life to live.
Yeah.
And yeah, and for me, I mean, we'll get into this even more so with the spirituality of money, but money represents to me freedom, right? And so the more money that I have, the more freedom and freedom of choice that I can create in my life.
Yeah. Oh my God, there's so much goodness there. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that story and your why of why you decided to do this work. I think it's so important to understand that money is freedom. When we say we want money, we're not saying we want dollar bills. We're saying we want, let's say, a house or a car, or maybe an ability to travel. And what that represents is what we are desiring. Like if there was no money and if someone would give that to us, you wouldn't say, I don't want the home, give me the money. Nobody is going to hold on to the
Right.
money. We want the
Right.
things that we want. And I love the perspective that you said, which is probably so different. And I know this. I have read so many books on money, and I've done so much work on my money story. But still, when you said that don't make decisions based on money, I was like, what? Don't make decisions based on money? And then when you said make decisions based on desires and dreams, it sounds so fulfilling almost. It sounds like you've taken the pressure off, right? You're not making
Mhm,
decisions based on the
mhm,
money, but you're making decisions based on the desired dream. Can you elaborate more on that? What does that really mean?
mhm. Yeah, so it means that I want you to look at what are the important things in your life, right? What are your core values?
Mm-hmm.
And really align all of your decision making, money wise or not money wise, based off of those core values. That's where I go again and again and again. So, for example, back in 2019, right before the pandemic, my family and I took a trip to Sicily.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent a lot of money going to Sicily.
Yeah.
And it was like a big family trip. And we went to see my husband's ancestors and like where his ancestors kind of grew up and was born and all of those things, right? And nowadays, when I think about that trip, not once do I think about the money or how much money I spent on that
Mm-hmm.
trip.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I think about how fortunate were we
Yeah.
to actually be able to go to Sicily right before the pandemic. And because his father and uncle who came with us on this trip, like they're getting much older, they've actually had a couple of recent health issues. And so they probably couldn't even make this trip anymore. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how incredible of an opportunity did we have to make that trip in 2019 and to be able to spend that money doing something where we were all together and we were able to be with our family and to feel that kind of sense of love and an experience and that adventure too all
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Something that you'll never forget. And right, and so this is what I'm talking about. It's like those desires that you have, they point to a different purpose in your life, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
our purpose and our soul is here to experience certain things, right, in this lifetime. And so money can actually help you to experience those things that your purpose is here to, to want to do. And
Yeah.
so that's what I want you to lean into. Lean into your core values and so that you can actually live out your soul's purpose.
Oh, I love that. And, of course, I always, I have this I wouldn't say I have a love and hate relationship with money. I love money, but also sometimes, like, money seems like it's so hard. It's like it
Mhm.
feels like a hard topic to discuss. It feels like something hard to even think about. But I always think of money as a tool
Mhm.
to do something else. It's
Mhm.
not like we said, it's not the money that you want, it's the things behind the money that you want. And when I
Mhm.
start thinking of it as a tool, it kind of like you take the power of it a little bit away, because that's the key, right? We give money so
Mhm.
much importance and we give it so much
Oh,
power,
yes.
then
Yes.
more than it deserves, to be honest, right? We give it like
Yes.
all the power in the world and we make ourselves small. But if we use it as
Yes.
a tool, like anything else in the toolbox, then it starts to feel like, oh, this is a tool that I can use in the way that I want, in the way that I need, and the way that it's supposed to be used. So the power for me goes a little bit away. Let's
Mhm.
talk about
That's perfect.
money and spirituality. So I want to be completely honest in this on this podcast about, my money story. And the reason is because I feel like a lot of spiritual people, in my opinion, can struggle with money. And I'll tell you where this came from for me. So I started my business about 5 years ago. I was a stay-at-home mom. And at that time, I used to take pocket money from my husband, to get a pedicure, to buy a dress, to go to the store. I didn't have my own money. So when I started my business, my goal was to replace the pocket money. My goal was to go get an upgrade on my spa pedicure without feeling guilty. That was my goal. And there was a lot of like things about my money story that I had to work on. My relationship with money, it had to do a lot with my parents' money stories. And I remember Katie and I, we did a session together back in the days, 5 years ago. And I started to heal my money story and I started to make money immediately. And I went from being a stay at home mom to being a multiple six-figure entrepreneur. And in the last 9 months, I started to pivot my business from being a business coach to a spiritual mentor. And then what I started to notice was that as I started to pivot, money started feeling very heavy for me again, because somewhere in my subconscious, I believed that money has no place in spirituality. That spiritual people shouldn't care about money because money has to do with ego. Now, this was all in my subconscious. I also started thinking about, I can't charge people a lot of money for the things that I'm giving them now. Before it was fine because I was helping them make more money. Now, because I am helping them with their spiritual journey, I can't charge them money. And I started to see the effect of that mindset, that story on my actual money earning capabilities in my bank on paper, right? Why is that hard? Why do we? First of all, I think I want to ask you a twofold question.
Yeah.
I actually want you to convince me. I think that's why I'm asking you this question. I think my question is money spiritual? And second, why does it become so hard for people who are in personal development, for spiritual people, to think about money this way? And it could also be with people who are not in spiritual, industries or doing spiritual things, but maybe, let's say, helping people with, there's something which does not help them make money. Maybe their style, right? Maybe their personal style, or maybe a career, not a career coach, but maybe writing a resume or anything. The twofold question here, Katie. I know I'm coming hard at you right now.
No, I love it. And I see this both in spiritual people and also with creative people, right? Really creative people who are, creating art and music and dance and acting. And they, both sides kind of consider themselves like, oh, well, the money shouldn't be important, right? And it almost feels like you're tainting whatever you're doing with money.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's very normal because our society kind of gives us this idea, right? Our society has over and over again reinforced the idea that, money can be evil, or money, is the root of all evil. Like, you hear these things over and over again, right? And then you also see some examples of like really rich people being super greedy and actually not doing great things with money, right? And taking advantage of people who are not, rich.
Right. You see creative people like artists and musicians and maybe spiritual people who are living very frugal lives, either by design or because they are not earning money. So there are almost these narratives in the culture that we kind of maybe take in knowingly or unknowingly.
Right. I mean, there's a whole saying there's a stereotype of the starving artist, right?
Totally.
Yeah. And so, and here's what I'm going to say is that money isn't spirituality, right? Money doesn't have anything to do with spirituality because money itself is neutral, right? Money actually isn't real. right? If you think about it, money isn't real. Like, we as humans made up the concept of money. And, I mean, from back in the day, there were like clay coins or whatever they used to make those exchanges. And then nowadays, every single currency in the world is very different from one another. A dollar in the US is not the same as the Canadian dollar, is not the same as the Australian dollar, right? We may call it a dollar, but it's not the same currency. It's not the same value. So we get to decide what value we want to put onto money, right? And this is the key to really starting to look at money in a very different way. And also in terms of spirituality, there have been moments, I mean, even if people are saying like, oh, the Bible or whatever you believe in, talks about like how poor people will go to heaven or whatever, there are also passages that kind of go against that. Right.
Yeah.
And I actually want to bring up like a Bible verse that I actually really like, which is in the book of Matthew. It's the parable of the talents. And it's the story of 3 servants. A master had 3 servants, and then he was going out of town. He leaves these 3 servants what he calls talents, and those are considered money back in the day. And he leaves one with, a little bit more, the second one with not that much, and then the third one he leaves with like 1 talent, let's say. And then he comes back and he asks for a report. And then the first servant who had the most said, oh, I did all of this and I actually got more money for you. Here's more of the riches. And then that master actually rewarded him and said, great, you did a great job. And here's more, right? Here's more land, cattle, whatever. Second person also increased the wealth, and the master was happy and rewarded him. The third servant, however, said, I know how hard you worked. And so what I did was I just buried it in the ground. And then now I took it up and gave it back to you. Now I'm going to give it back to you because I know how hard you worked. And the master said to him, you are such a lazy, wicked servant, because if you knew I worked so hard, you could have at least put the money in the bank and earned some interest.
Yeah.
Or, done something with it. Instead, you just buried it and then gave it back to me, right? So to me, this story is twofold. One, it's whatever resources we are given, it's important that we actually use our resources for even greater things. And then we will actually be rewarded even more so, right? And then the second thing, it has to do with the word talent. Even though it means something in the Bible about money, it's also our God-given talent.
Yeah.
Right? We are given, each and every one of us, I believe that we are given a gift, right? No matter what it is that you do for a living, that's not really your gift, right? You have a certain gift within whatever it is that you do. And you must shine your gifts in this world, right? And when you shine your gifts in this world, instead of burying it in the sand, burying it in the ground, or giving it back to God, right? That's an insult, right? That's an insult to God that you're giving back your talents.
Yeah. You're giving back a gift that was given to you.
Right. And I have to say that when it comes to money, you utilizing your gifts in this world, that's what you get a reward for that. God wants you to be shining your gifts in this world, right? And there is no reason for you to not accept the reward and the payments and and getting paid to do what you do, because God wants you to be first of all shining your gifts in the world, teaching people more about spirituality and coming home to your own soul, right? And he wants to reward you. He or she or whoever you believe in, right? The universe wants to reward you, right? With more, with more resources to be able to do what you do in this world.
Oh my God. So good, Katy. We can just pack up, go home. End of episode. This was it. The Holy Grail. So good. For a second, I didn't know where that story was going, but as soon as you talked about gifts and talents, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense.
Yes.
And again, coming back
Yes.
to the power that we give money, and when you were saying that money isn't real, we just made it up. I read this book, can't remember the name of the book. I'll probably look it up and put it in the show notes for anybody who wants to read it. It talked about, how money is such a fleeting concept. If we all were to, and this happened back in the Great Depression, if we all were to go to the bank and withdraw our money that we have in supposedly our bank accounts, we won't be able to. They don't have it. Right? That's actually what happened during the Great Depression, and that's what caused the Great Depression, right? One of the reasons, of course. So, you're so right about this, and it just answered all my questions about how money is, again, like a tool that we can use, and if you have these gifts that God has given to you, we have to use them, and we will be rewarded with more, which also for a lot of people can be like, okay, but do I only have to follow the herd and do the things that my parents taught me to do, like work in a bank or work in a corporate? And I think that's worth noticing, that here we're talking about your God-given gifts, your purpose, what you're really, really good at.
Yes. Yes. And when you do that, when you really show up in your gifts and go full force on it, I know that you're going to be rewarded, right? And this is something that I want, like, even, people who are spiritual and or creative, right? Like, you have this beautiful gift to share in this world, and it's actually like, I want to say you're actually going against spirituality and going against the universe and God when you don't want to do that, right? Or when you feel like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Right? When you actually tell yourself, like, I'm too afraid, or perhaps that's not going to bring me money. Like, that's actually the thinking that is going against God and the
going
universe.
against nature too, right? I was just suddenly, while you were saying, it reminded me of, let's say that there's a flower that's ready to bloom, and it says, no, I will not bloom until I'm 100% convinced that I will receive the sunshine. It just trusts that its purpose is to bloom, and it will receive the sunshine, and it will receive the rain.
Yes.
Lovely.
Exactly.
I love that. Let's talk a little bit about having money blocks. So I've definitely had them. I've worked through them. First of all, like, what are money blocks for those who don't know? How to uncover them, and if there's any tools or any practices that you can share with us on how to getting unstuck from them.
Yeah. So money blocks are very simply things that we've really developed in childhood, beliefs, right? Deep, deep down beliefs. They're so unconscious that you kind of don't know that they're there. And you really think that those are your true beliefs, right? And now that you're an adult, you get to take a look and see where those beliefs are coming from, and whether or not you truly believe in them or not. Because I have to say, like, I think everybody who's a parent would understand this, is that even if you thought your parents did like the most amazing job with you, there are probably still things you want to do differently with your children.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Right. And so this is the same thing. You may have all these beliefs that you've gotten from your parents, your grandparents, with friends and other people around you, like as a child, right? And as a child, you don't really understand money as a concept because, again, money isn't real. So it's very hard for children to understand that as a concept, right? And so you're absorbing what it is that people are doing. Like, for example, my grandmother on my father's side, she thought of money as like the most important thing, right? There was one day that she came to stay with us that she came out of the guest room and said, "Oh my gosh, my money, somebody stole my money." Like she
Mm-hmm.
had hidden some cash underneath the mattress or something. And we spent the whole entire day looking for her money and we never ever found it.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't know to this day, like what was the deal with that whole thing.
Right.
But as a kid, what I got in my mind and being was that I don't want money to be important, right? Like I think money should be, like just not important in my life. And
Right.
that became my money block, so
Mm-hmm.
that when I went to college I was buying drinks for all my friends, I was taking cabs everywhere,
Yeah.
like I was making money, and then as soon as I made it, it went out,
Yeah.
because I didn't want it to be important. I didn't want to be like my grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
who made money like the most important thing in her life, more important than people, right? She used
Mm-hmm.
to say things like, when I die, I'm going to get all my money out in cash and be buried with my money so that no one can get it. And she was always afraid that somebody was going to take her money.
Right.
Uh, and so that is a money block, right? And then
Yeah.
I also have worked with a client who told me a story about how her dad was really poor growing up, and he ate tomato soup every night for dinner, and then he vowed to himself that when he became rich that he was never going to have tomato soup ever again, and he never did. And she had never tried tomato soup, and yet she had this belief that tomato soup was gross. And even when
Mm.
people ordered it at restaurants, she was like disgusted by it. And to
Yeah.
me, that's a perfect example of a money block, right? It's like a
Right.
lighter example, but it is a money block because it's like she all of a sudden have this borrowed belief from
Yeah.
someone else, right? And it's not her own belief because she had never even tried it.
Mm-hmm.
So now that she knows that, she can actually try tomato soup. And if she likes it, she can have a grilled cheese sandwich with it and, have a
Yeah.
cozy meal. Or if she doesn't like it, great, because now she knows for herself, right?
Yeah.
This is the same thing with money. So it's important that we really discover what are those beliefs. Like, what are all of the beliefs, right? Like, it doesn't even have to be around money.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, what blocks us sometimes may be those deep down beliefs that we may have, right? And I also have talked to a client one time where he was like, "Oh, my parents are great. They were always super supportive of me and my career. He's an actor, and they came to all my shows and everything, right?" And then we kept talking about it, and then he said, "Oh, there was one time my parents actually said to me during college, like, this is great and everything, but what if you just get that other major just in case? Like, get the business major just in case."
Mm-hmm.
And that just in case part really stuck with him,
Yeah.
right? So then he was able to make money doing everything else except in his acting career,
Wow.
because his beliefs inside of him was so rooted in the just in case part, in the part where his parents made him understand,
Right.
right? Even though it's not real, but he understood it as, it's not a job that most people can make money doing.
Right. Thanks so much for sharing those examples, Katie. I feel like they just bring the point home. And I also want to add the tomato soup example. It's such a great example of even coming back home to yourself, because
Mhm.
there's someone who's decided that she doesn't like tomato soup. Now that's a very, very simple, very simple thing. But she's decided that she doesn't like tomato soup without even trying it ever in her life, because that's what her belief system was teaching her. Now, when she's come back home to herself, now she can make the choice for herself without anyone
Yes.
else making the choice for herself if she likes it or not. And this is tomato soup, but this happens to so many things, right? This happens to careers, places we live, partners we choose, how we decide
Yes.
to live, what we wear, what we don't wear. And
Yep.
I think it's so important that we, as we journey home to self, is that we become conscious and aware of what our beliefs that we have made based on our core values, what we believe
Mhm.
in, and what are beliefs that we have taken on from other people.
Yes.
Hey, Deepshika here. I just wanted to take a quick break and thank you for tuning in. I love making this podcast for you, and I hope you love listening. If you do, the best way to show it is, yes, you guessed it, reviews. Reviews, especially on Apple Podcasts, help the show's visibility and get it to more people. So if you're enjoying the show, let us know. Thanks again. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Yes. And so one of the things that I would encourage your listeners to do is start to put down a timeline. Write down a timeline of your life, right? Starting from 0 to 5. You know, what are the things, even if you can't remember most of them, but what are some of the things that maybe you heard, right? Like, oh, you know, like for me, I actually heard a story of when I was in my mom's womb, that my mom had to go over to that same grandmother's house to help clean up her throw up. You know, and I think that that created something in me too, you know, of not of wanting to be more independent in my life, right?
Yeah.
And not be so tied into how others need you to be, right?
Yeah.
Like others want you, like for her, she wanted to be a good daughter-in-law, right? And so then she was willing to do things that made her uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so this is the path that I want listeners to get, is like start to write down everything that you have experienced in your life and that you've actually heard about your own stories, and then start to uncover and see what kind of beliefs that you actually have gotten from those experiences.
Right. And some of these beliefs don't even have anything to do with money.
Oh, a lot of them don't. And yet, I always tell people your emotional life follows your financial life, and your financial
Totally.
life follows your emotional life, right?
Mhm.
Because so many of us have made money such an important thing in our lives, and given it so much power, like you were talking about at the beginning,
Right.
then all of a sudden, whenever our emotional, you know, life is really up and down, then our financial life is going to be up and down.
Yeah.
You know, when we're feeling really clear about our goals and our emotions are really like on track, right? And we feel great about things, then our finances follow in that same direction.
Right. I think one of the things that trip definitely most women, I would say, is a sense of worth, a lack of their own self-worth. I think definitely that was for me for sure. And of course I had, beliefs related to money as well, that you have to work really hard for your money, and money, you can't spend all your money, or like so many other beliefs that we all have culturally, religiously. We adapt them, we read them in our religious scriptures, we hear them from our culture, we also adapt them from our family and caregivers. But one of the things I think, for especially for women, is that, a sense of worth, which totally affects our net worth. And I remember when I was working on my money story, and this has always been kind of like, a central theme of my, overarching lessons on my journey home to self, is realizing my own sense of worth. And while you were talking about your experience, one thing that I heard when I was in my mother's womb was, how being born a girl in India at that time was not considered to be good. It was considered to be, a mourning, to be honest. Boys were celebrated, girls were considered to be, a burden, because in India, dowry system was still very prevalent, and you have to invest a lot in girls' education, and then you have to give them away. You have to spend money in their education, spend money in their marriage, and then give dowry. So that was a story that I heard not only from my family, but also culturally. So my sense of worth was so small just because I was a girl. That was like my story for a long, long time. And that totally affected my net worth. Have you experienced that in your clients as well, that their self-worth is
Yes.
equal to your net worth?
Yes, your self-worth is definitely equal to your net worth. Your net worth is not equal to your self-worth though.
Right,
And
right.
right, like I've seen lots of people with really high net worth
Mhm.
that may not have had great self-worth, and that's when they get into trouble, right? That's when you see the child stars or the rock stars like
Mhm.
blow through all of their money, and then why people who win the lottery, right?
Yes,
Studies have shown that people who win the lottery lose their money and actually go bankrupt within 3 years.
totally.
Right, 70% of lottery winners do that, and
Mhm.
it's because it's very tied into their self-worth, right?
Mhm.
And most of us can't even understand that. If you haven't won the lottery, you cannot fathom like losing, $100 million or whatever
Yeah,
the
yeah.
lottery is, right? And yet, if you think about it, if your self-worth isn't really all the way there, right? Like it's so easy for people to come out of the woodwork, ask you for the money, and if you don't feel like you truly deserve it, you're going to give that away. You're going to give
Mhm.
away every single bit of the money, and then all of a sudden you're going to go, "Oh, where did all that money go?" Right?
Right.
And it's really like when you were telling that story about how, yeah, like in India, you know, girls are not as valued, right? We're not as valued. I remember watching this Chef's Table on
Mhm.
Netflix, and there is a woman, a chef, who
Mhm.
is from India, and she talked about this, right? And now she has created a restaurant that is, I think it's Michelin starred. It's like amazing, and in London, and she
Is
hires.
that the Darjeeling Express? Is that the
Yes,
restaurant? Oh,
yes,
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 I
yes,
know her.
yes,
Yes.
yeah. Isn't it incredible? And I got to
Yeah.
meet her over the summer when I was
Oh,
in London.
amazing.
Yeah, I went to that restaurant and she just happened to be there, and we
Mhm.
talked about this, and she, yeah, she just feels like, it's so interesting because this is exactly like when we talk about what we do for a living, it's not even what we do, right? Because she has this restaurant and she's created a really an award-winning restaurant, right? And that
Right.
everybody knows about. However, she feels like her purpose is this, right? Is to look at women and girls in such a different way and to
Mhm.
you know, elevate women and to
Yes.
say that you are valuable, right? You are so valuable in this world.
Mhm.
And then she's hired all women in her kitchen, which is
Right.
really heard of, right? It's just incredible. Yeah, her mission has just been greater, and I think that like we, nowadays I think that there's a movement for us to all really change this trajectory, right? And
Mhm.
change how society is seeing us. And yet, yeah, it starts with us, right? It starts with your story and the things that you heard as a child. And to
Mhm.
start to change that narrative that isn't really true, right?
Mhm.
These are beliefs that are not really true, and yet we, as a society start to believe in them, right? We start to believe that, oh yeah, no, it must be true, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and
And I
and
think
yet,
my biggest realization in all the blocks that I've had is that somewhere I know that those are not true. Consciously, I know that that's bullshit.
right,
Right.
right.
And that's my almost like my radar going on a high alert that, okay, I caught a belief. I caught the
Mhm.
subconscious belief because I know this is bullshit. I know this is blocking me, and now I have to change it. So let's say if listeners have uncovered some belief about themselves, maybe it's like money is evil, or it's so hard to make money. How can they begin to shift it?
Yeah. I want, like, let's say you're thinking that, yeah, like all rich people are greedy or whatever, right? Or, yeah, let's just take that for an example.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to start to look at who around you and then who in the media or people that you admire are not evil, right? Like start to give yourself just a very simple way of examining and seeing that that isn't true. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, like just recently, I wrote about the Patagonia founder,
Mm-hmm.
and how that he gave away his entire company, right, as
Yeah.
profits, all of profits. And to me, the crux isn't the point of that story isn't the fact that he gave away his money, but the point of the fact is that his his company makes good money. They
Right.
make, they're $1 billion company, right?
Yeah.
So, and they make like over $100 million each and every year. And it's
Right.
not that they want to slow down on those profits. They're not even talking about that. Instead, what they're talking about is what are they doing with those profits?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that is the beauty of it. And so for me to see that as an example of like a company that has ideals and values that I really admire, then that starts to shift, right? It starts to shift that concept or the belief inside of me that like, oh, all these companies are greedy, and like Amazon, they only paid certain amount in taxes, in the last couple of years, they're
Mm-hmm.
all greedy, right? Instead, it's like, no, you can have a company that makes a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
and still do good in this world, right? And create a
Right.
purpose and have, just as long as you understand what you want your money to do for you.
Totally. And that reminds me, when the pandemic hit, my community was, of course, freaking out. Everybody was freaking out. And I had to remind them that, the money doesn't change who you are, right? And
Mhm.
so also crisis, it doesn't change who you are. You will always be the person who will go by your core values. If you're a good person, you'll always be a good person, whether a crisis hits you or not. It doesn't suddenly make you want to go and hoard on all the toilet paper, right? And
Yes.
money is the same. It doesn't make you evil or good or bad. It's who you are. If you have more money, it's what you do with it. If you're a good person, you will do good with money. What I have
Mhm.
experienced is, people who make a lot of money then know what to do with that money, whether it's giving away, whether it's just starting charities, whether it's helping other people. That narrative definitely shifted this belief for me, is that money is the root of all evil. As a
Mhm.
person, like, giving is my love language. I love to give. And if I make more money, that's when I can give to other people. And I'm not just talking about donations. I'm also talking about buying products, hiring people. But if I don't have any
Yes.
money, if I don't earn any money, then I can't hire anyone. Then I can't
Right.
buy products for myself and my kids. And I can't travel. I can't put money back in the community. I'll
Right.
always be worrying about myself. It's
Exactly.
like the needs pyramid, right? You're always worrying about your survival, but the more money you make, you go up the needs hierarchy, and you start to think about self actualization there. So that definitely
Mhm.
helped me shift that. So I love the idea of finding examples in your world and really testing it out. Does it hold true, or is it just
Yes.
something that we've learned from our environment?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. There's, I think, somebody named Byron Katie who
Hmm.
talks about, right, the
Four
belief
questions.
system, right,
Yeah.
the questions, right, the
Right.
questions of, is it true, and then you
Is it?
ask
Yeah.
yourself again, is it really true?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if
Yeah,
I
it's a
didn't
very
have this
good,
belief, yeah.
totally. Yeah, it's a really good inquiry based system where you can start to question whether,
Mhm.
you actually believe it is true, or it's something inside of you. And of course, it. Sometimes we need mentors, we need coaches like yourself, we need therapists to
Mhm.
help us
Mhm.
unlearn those mechanisms, unlearn those
Yes.
narratives as well. It's not as easy as, just finding examples. But I think this is a great way to
Totally.
start to shift.
Yeah, sometimes if they're really deeply unconscious, then yes, then it would be helpful to like find a coach or a therapist to really uncover what those deep beliefs are that are keeping you stuck.
Right. All right. I have one more thing that I would love to discuss with you. I cannot let you go away without talking about the topic of manifestation. It's all the craze
Mhm.
right now. Tell me a little bit about how you define it. How can people begin to manifest? I think you have a very unique approach to how you look at manifestation, and I would love for our listeners to hear it.
Yeah. Well, I have to first give a little caveat. It's like when people talk about woo woo, right? Like I always say I'm just woo, not woo woo, because I have one foot really planted in reality
Right.
and, a very grounded place. And partially it's because money isn't something we can take away with us, right? When we pass, that thing is not any longer.
Right.
And so having all the vision boards and all those things like that doesn't really help us to actually create money.
Mhm.
So and then on the other side of things, I do believe that, like the law of attraction is just as real as like the law of gravity, right? It is
Right.
a law, it's a law. So there is some scientific basis
Mhm.
for how manifestation works.
Mhm.
In order to really attract the things that you want, you have to be in the vibration
Yes.
of whatever it is that you want, right? So, and it's really, and again, it goes back to beliefs as well, right? We don't get what we want, we get what we believe,
Mm.
right? If you keep saying you want something, if you want to be a famous actor, for example, or an actor in a major motion picture, however, there's something deep down inside of you that doesn't really believe that can happen, then it's not that you can't do it. It's just that's just going to take you way, way, way longer to get
Mhm.
there,
Mhm.
right? And so instead, it's like you got to really clear out, what it is that, your belief system is saying to you so that you can truly 100% believe that this is possible for you,
Mhm.
right? And then to put yourself into the vibration. And by putting yourself into the vibration, it means like, one, you've got to start noticing what is there for you, right? It's the same thing as when you buy a new car, right? Then you start noticing that car every
Right.
single place that you see it,
Yeah.
right? It's that is the exact same thing as in that frequency. All
Yeah.
right. And then the second thing is start to surround yourself with those like-minded people, right? The
Mhm.
ones that can really pull you up rather than tear you down, right?
Right.
You don't want to be around the vibrations of people who are like, well, get that other degree just in case,
Right. Right. Or you can't do
or
this. It's too hard.
right.
Yeah. Totally.
Right, right. Or even people who say things like, "Wow, like you're making money doing, being a coach? Like how does that happen?" Like,
Right.
right? Like
I have to tell you a really funny story. I went for my dental cleaning on, I think it was Friday or Thursday. I hate going to the dentist. I'm like a real dental phobe. Anyway, so I go there and this woman is trying to calm me down by making small talk. So she asked me, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a coach." Or I don't know what she heard, but I said, "I'm a coach." So she says, "Oh, I have a coach handbag."
Oh my gosh. Is that what she thought you meant?
So she thought that I meant that I work for the company coach.
Oh my, oh my
Then when
God.
I was like, "Oh no, no, not that coach," that I explained to her what I did. And she didn't say anything because she wanted to be polite, but the expression on her face was like, "What the F does that even mean?"
Right? I know. People have asked me if I was like an athletic coach too, and I'm like, no, definitely not that.
So what you're saying is we don't want to be around that people all the time where they're like,
Right.
"We don't even know what you do and how you're going to do it. We don't even believe in you."
Exactly. Exactly. You've got to be around people who believe in you so much, right? And then you also want to get into like a very grateful emotional alignment as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you get to do what you're doing, and you get to make money doing what you love too,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that in the beginning may feel a little scary, like it may feel like, ooh, that's not me yet. And I want you to just keep practicing that, right? Keep practicing and putting it into your being,
Mm-hmm.
that sense of like, oh, I'm so grateful that I get to do what I do, right? And I'm so grateful I get to make money doing this as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And it sounds pretty simple. And like most things that we discuss in this podcast here, it actually is. There's no scientific 2-step method here. There's no complicated steps 12-step framework that you have to go through to manifest money. But it is that simple. If
Mhm.
money is energy and it is vibrating at a
Yes.
certain level, and it's not even money that you're trying to attract, that we have established, you're trying to attract an opportunity or maybe a house, a car, or a vacation or whatever. It's at a frequency, and we have to be at that frequency. Another thing that I would
Yes.
like to add is, I'm not sure what your experience has been with it, but my experience has been that the moment I surrender my desire, the moment I
Mm.
surrender what I want
Mhm.
and not obsess over it again and again and
Mhm.
again, it manifests on its own.
Oh, 100%. That's one of my top things that I tell people too. It's like, one, you have to get clarity. Why do you want to do the thing that you want, or why do you want the thing that you want? And be so clear with the universe that there's no other questions about it, right? Like
Yeah.
when you're a kid and you ask your mom for something for your birthday. If your mom says, "What do you want for your birthday?" and you say, "I don't really know," like then the likelihood of you getting it is probably not great.
Right.
But if you're like, "I want the Star Wars like Lego whatever set," right? Force Awakens set, then the likelihood of you getting it is probably 99%, right?
You're
Depending.
talking like my son right now.
Okay, yeah. I'm a big Star Wars nerd, so
Oh,
I love
he
it.
too. He too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the universe works in the same exact way.
Yeah.
It works in the exact same way. If you are so clear about what it is that you want and why you want it, that is the first key to getting it, right?
Yeah.
And then it's important that you are in receiving mode, which means that you know you're worthy of receiving. And that goes back to our discussion around self-worth,
Mhm.
around, our money blocks. And then, yes, let go. Let go doesn't mean surrender, doesn't mean I give up.
Yeah.
It just means I have faith.
Right.
I have so much faith that this is going to show up, and I don't need to control it, right? Because, and we all know this and have heard this over and over again, when you don't control it, the universe actually does something much grander and bigger than you could have ever imagined it can be, right?
Totally.
You're limiting yourself when
Hmm.
you actually try and control it and say it needs to be this way or that way, or it needs to happen now or in 2 months.
Yeah.
That is not the way the universe works, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. And I love that you said surrender with trust, because surrender doesn't mean that you give up, that you
Right.
lose hope. You're surrendering with trust. I'm glad that you talked about the topic of Star Wars, because that was actually my son's experience this summer. He is a big Star Wars fan. He's into all things Star Wars right now at this in this phase of his life, and he wanted I don't know, 5 or 6 Star Wars Lego sets. And I said, dude, like you're gonna have to manifest that, because I'm not buying you. And he actually first, and he asked me how to do it. So I told him, I said, first you make a list, get clear on what you want. So he did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He researched what all Star Wars Legos he wanted. So, and he made a list in his journal. And then he was like, all right, now what do I do? I said, okay, now you just surrender it. You be grateful for it every day. And you do what little things you can do to do that. So he asked me to give him some chores for every day during the summer, and he wanted to get paid for those chores. So he would make the bed, he would sweep the floor, he would unload the dishwasher, stuff like that. And he accumulated his points. And at the end of and whenever I give him, I don't give him pocket money all the time, but I do give him money when he does these chores. He earns points, and those points count for money. We always have a rule that a percentage of that he can spend, a percentage of that he has to save, and a percentage he has to give away to a charity.
I love that.
So,
Yep.
he earned some money, which was good enough to buy him a couple of Lego sets, but not enough. And when I asked him, what are you going to do about the other Lego sets? He was like, it's going to come. It's going to come. And then my sister came here for her summer holidays, and she took him to Target and she bought him that exact Lego set.
See, it works.
It was such a beautiful lesson for him to experience his own
Yeah.
manifestation, but also, leaving all the, everything aside here. It's such a beautiful, lesson for us a beautiful story for us to even think about how manifestation can happen when you are in the innocence of it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because when you're in the innocence of it, you're not controlling it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So good. I love this. I love how it's coming full circle with the Star Wars.
Totally. Oh my God, he loves Star Wars. Well,
Yeah.
Katie, thank you so much for being on the show and talking about money. I have
Mhm.
definitely got so much from this conversation alone. I can't wait to uncover what more money blocks I have. I'm excited for it, actually. Before I let you go, I want to ask you one question. I always ask my guests. I would love for you to answer as well. I believe that we are not perfect. We're constantly evolving, and there is no
Yes.
there is no arriving on the journey home to self.
Yes.
I think that's one of the key things that I want to tell the listeners here is that we're not on this epic journey where we're going to reach a point and we're going to say, hey, I made it, I'm the best. That's never going to happen. We're always going to be on this journey. What
Yes.
journey are you on right now for yourself, and what's any challenge or lesson that you are learning from it?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question, and I completely agree because I think that, we can have, when it comes to self-worth, it's not really about being perfect.
Mhm.
It's really about, building ourselves to understand who we are and what we bring to the table, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, my journey in these last couple of years has been a journey of children. Like I've wanted to have children, and my husband and I haven't been able to have any children. We've tried all kinds of things, going down the IVF route, going down natural holistic routes, acupuncture, everything, and it hasn't manifested. And
Mhm.
and this is my biggest thing in terms of surrendering, right? And so
Mm.
in the last year, I've had to just really surrender and say, if it isn't God, the universe's plan for us,
Mhm.
then it's up to God. It's not up to me, and it's not
Mhm.
up to my husband. And we've taken the actions that we needed to take, and
Right.
and it's been there's been a lot of pain and a lot of emotional there's been a lot of emotions that have come with it.
Of
And
course.
yet, yeah, and the thing that I've learned the most is that it's so important to just surrender and let go, and to not strive and hold on to it so deeply.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Katie. I know that can be so vulnerable. We are all hoping and praying for whatever that's best for you and your family to manifest in your life. We'll keep you in our hopes and prayers. Thank you again. I would love for you to share, where can the listeners find you?
Yeah, I'm on all social media at Katy Chen Mazzara. And you can also come to my website at katychenmazzara.com. And I will also give you a link to a free masterclass that I'm going to be hosting later. And yeah, so everybody can come on and learn more about the spiritual aspects of money, as well as some really practical steps too.
Awesome. What is the masterclass called?
It's called the Financial Freedom Method Masterclass.
Amazing. All right. We're going to put
Yes.
all the links on the show notes so that people can go and experience your juicy wisdom. Katy, thank you again so much for sharing your wisdom and for being a listener and for being a guest. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast and in my life. Thank you again.
My pleasure. And I love having you in my life too.
Oh.
Thanks for listening to Journey Home to Self. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. And of course, your 5-star reviews are always appreciated. Thanks again, and see you next week.